While the number of tornado outbreaks may be increasing in the U.S., the total number of tornadoes actually dropped this year by a lot. U.S. weather agencies track this data. In 2016, they counted just over 200 tornadoes. That is a drastic drop. You can see the tally since the year 2000. There are usually around 1,000 or more tornadoes every year in the United States, but not in 2016. Let's piece all of this together with one of the most respected voices on climate in the United States. Bob Henson is a weather and climate blogger with Weather Underground. Bob, welcome. It seems the number of storms may be dropping, but the severity of them might be getting worse. Is that true?
That's right. There's been some interesting research and culminating in this science article that was mentioned, looking at when tornadoes happen, how often they happen, and especially how they're clustering into outbreaks. Now, this is something that has always happened. Tornadoes have typically occurred in scattershot method. You might get one or two tornadoes and a few storms, and then every so often you get one of these outbreaks that can be as many as dozens of tornadoes, even once in a while hundreds. And these outbreaks, it appears, are actually having more tornadoes within them, but then we're getting increasingly quiet periods in between the outbreaks. So it's as if you're taking the total number of tornadoes and munching them together into bigger clusters with bigger gaps in between. And it's not exactly clear why that's happening, but it seems to be a pretty significant sustained trend now.
A moment ago, we were talking about the two horrific tornadoes in the United States. Back in 2011, that year, tornadoes claimed more than 550 lives. Let's look at a graphic here showing just how rare that is. Usually that number is around 50 or so. What have we learned, Bob, from tornadoes and storms in general that can save lives?
Well, one thing we do know is that most people are most likely to be hurt or killed in these very, very big outbreaks. So there's been a lot of attention to how to communicate the message even a couple of days ahead, that coming up, you should be aware that, say, a couple of days from now is the potential for a big outbreak. In a lot of parts of the United States, especially in the South, school systems are now closing the morning of a big outbreak, so the kids won't be caught in a school bus or in unsafe schools. So there's been a real growth in awareness, and I think that's helped a lot. Unfortunately, there's a double-edged sword here, because if people have advance notice and they see a storm coming and they may think it's going to bring a bad tornado, say in an hour, they may be more tempted to get in their cars. And there's real danger there, because you can literally have traffic jams. And that has actually happened, especially in the Oklahoma City area over the last couple of years. So we need to pay attention to how to get the message out, and especially how to make sure people are in safe places.
The study I referenced says the increase in tornado outbreaks may not be linked to climate change, but what are some of the changes we're seeing right now that are linked to climate change?
Well, that's an open question and a very interesting one. The assumption going forward, and this is based on models and theory, is that as the atmosphere warms up near the ground, we're going to have more instability, because the warm, moist air near the surface and cold air aloft tends to cause rising motion and severe thunderstorms. So the thinking is maybe later in the 20th century, we'll be more likely to have perhaps more tornadoes. Now, what wasn't expected is that the wind shear that we get, where you have low-level winds from one direction, upper-level winds from another, that's what gives storms their spin. That's what's been increasing in the last 50 years, and scientists didn't really see that coming. This is a new and important finding from the study in the past week. So it's not clear whether this is happening because of climate change, or perhaps just maybe a multi-decadal variability, and perhaps it'll switch back to lower wind shear going forward. But what's happened appears to be a little bit different than what we think is going to happen related to climate change down the line.
So Bob, if anyone knows the answer to my next question, it would be you. Now what? What can we do with the information that we have, that storms seem to be getting worse for whatever the reason?
Well, what we can do, I think, is simply be aware that when there is an outbreak, when we do have these especially dangerous situations, there's even more potential than there was a few decades ago to have many, many tornadoes, dozens. And so those are the situations where you have to be aware, sometimes for hours on end. One location can get multiple tornadoes. People just need to be persistent and sensible, be where you have shelter, take the storm seriously, and simply be prepared, because we do have better and better notice, often several days ahead of the outbreaks. And when there is a particularly bad tornado, we often could tell, say, an hour away, as much as an hour, that bad tornado is coming. So certainly the science is better and better on warnings and awareness, but you still can have terrible death tolls. We saw in the Joplin tornado you mentioned, 2011, that killed more than 100 people. Deadliest tornado in close to 100 years in the United States. So there is still the potential for catastrophe. So, awareness is critical, and we can make a difference by making sure our warning systems are well supported and by people taking action.
Awareness and hopefully talking to experts like yourself will make a difference. Bob Henson, thank you so much.